Hi, I'm Suze Shaner, and I'm your host today of Community Forum. And I have the great pleasure to introduce to you Stephanie Dalfonzo, who is a speaker, author, and expert on anxiety. Welcome, Stephanie.
Thanks, Suze. So happy to be here.
Great to have you. Now, you say an expert on anxiety, not producing anxiety, but alleviating.
No, I try to alleviate it, not.
Right. Just want to clarify that for our audience. So I'm usually very, I'll just let the audience know, I'm usually very expressive with my hands. I'm going to only be using one hand today because I just had rotator cuff surgery. So, and somebody just hugged me very hard before we got on the air. So I'm a little inflamed there, but no anxiety.
Okay, good.
So just to tell our viewers a little bit about your background. Here's what I know, that you had a whole career in radio before ever getting into this, and then you've explored lots of different healing modalities. So I'd love to hear from you.
So I was a celebrity radio DJ in the 80s and 90s, and my last job was doing the morning show. And my kids were little. I was getting up at 3:30 in the morning. I went into horrendous insomnia.
What was your handle, just for anybody who might have been around?
I was Stevie Knox down in South Florida, and
Okay.
Knox is my maiden name, so shorten Stephanie to Stevie, and Stevie Knox riff on Stevie Nicks from Fleetwood Mac.
Right, nice takeoff
Right.
there.
So when I did this last show, doing the morning show, insomnia was like, oh my gosh, through the roof. And I didn't know at the time that insomnia and anxiety are basically cousins. So now I have spent my entire life not realizing that I was dealing with anxiety my entire life.
Well, hard to sleep when you're really anxious.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, makes sense.
And the whole thing about not knowing I had anxiety, so many people have anxiety and don't realize it, because if that's all you know, you've got this constant current in the background, like, you don't know any different.
Mm-hmm. So radio seems to me is sort of being a DJ on a radio show. That whole environment sounds kind of frenetic anyway, isn't it?
It was, but it was fun.
Yeah,
it was
high energy.
It was very different than now. I don't think it's quite as fun now to be a DJ. We had a lot of freedom back then, and to be creative in our own ways. And so, yeah, it was definitely high energy, and it was fun. But again, I didn't realize there was that in the background. So when I couldn't sleep, I did what most people do. I went to the doctor. The doctor gave me a prescription.
Okay.
It worked.
So you took a pharmaceutical drug.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It worked for a short time, and then it stopped. That threw me into even worse situation, because then it was not just what if at 2 in the morning, but what if I take the pill and it doesn't work? Oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh.
So it just kind of ratcheted up. So why did it stop working? Do you reach a tolerance level?
I don't know. I'm not an expert on pharmaceuticals.
Oh, so you didn't get into the doctor didn't give you any, just like, okay, this isn't working, and then you started exploring other alternatives?
It was, okay, I have to find a way out of this. And this was in like the mid-90s, right? So think about it. The World Wide Web was just starting, right? So it wasn't like I could Google. Right. So I happened to be on a teleclass, on a corded telephone. This was cutting-edge technology back then. And I heard Gary Craig talking about this new tapping. Emotional freedom techniques. And it's like acupuncture, only it's self-applied. And now it's becoming very popular. Now people know what what it is. But back then, here's this guy talking about this tapping technique, and I was desperate.
Well, and he was interesting because he's an engineer by background and trade, and he didn't invent it or anything. He just discovered it, but he popularized it.
Right.
And packaged it.
Right. Yeah. And I was very fortunate that I trained with him 3 times before he retired. And when I had my podcast, he was my first guest for the first 2 episodes, because literally he changed my life. I learned to tap, and I was able to start to go to sleep again. And then Gary always said, try it on everything. So Gary would say, let me help you tap away this sensation in your shoulder right now. Yeah. And so here I was in the mid-90s. I'm now a stay-at-home mom because I'm not doing my radio show anymore. And I'm telling people, oh my gosh, I learned this technique. And I'd watch their eyes just glaze over like, oh,
because you're tapping different energy meridians.
Right. Yeah. They're like, oh my gosh, are you crazy? And now, I've gone on to study hypnosis, neuro-linguistic programming.
So you're a hypnotherapist. NLP, just for our audience who aren't familiar with NLP, can you just give a bumper sticker on NLP?
NLP is really about using language for change, and it's I'm like the language police. I'm always listening for how people are saying things and saying, could I invite you to rephrase that, because what we say becomes our reality.
Yeah.
So I've studied for over 20 years now. I've studied all these different holistic and natural, many very scientifically proven techniques to overcome anxiety. And it doesn't mean that I don't ever experience anxiety. I just wrote an article last week about that, saying, just because I've written a book on overcoming anxiety doesn't mean I don't experience it. It means that just like if you're a tennis player, you're ready for when that ball's coming to you.
Yeah.
When you practice some of the techniques, I've got 35 different techniques in my book, when you practice these on a daily basis, then you're keeping your stress levels down so that when something comes and hits you upside the head, which is going to, it's just part of the human condition.
Well, I mean, if you didn't have any anxiety, you'd be dead, really.
Yes.
I mean, there's degrees of anxiety. Some of it is, concrete, what are you dealing with that day? And then, of course, there's I call it the anxiety with a capital A, the existential condition.
Right.
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 I mean, we're probably, that we know of, the only creature that is aware that we're going to die someday.
Yeah.
And has the consciousness that we do, as far as we know.
Right.
So even just having that, some people just, in terms of when and what's going to happen, and
Well,
so it's different gradations, right?
Exactly. And if we just let life happen to us, then it's really not, not my ideal for how I want to live life. I want to be living by conscious choice. And so by practicing every single day, like there's not a day that goes by that I'm not doing one of my many techniques and actually doing multiple of them, because otherwise I'm letting life happen to me. And we can't control what's going on around us.
Yep.
We do control what happens to us.
Yeah, so I just want to, so there's a couple, as you mentioned, book here. So Goodbye Anxiety, Hello Freedom. And so a nice little take on emotional freedom technique.
Yes.
Right? And you start out, there's a couple of things here that I wanted to just hit on. You start out talking about ACEs. So in terms of putting it in context in the background, before you get into all the different techniques, can you just talk a little bit about ACEs?
Yes, ACEs is Adverse Childhood Experiences. And I was so thrilled because for so many years I was, talking about all of this and I didn't have the research to back it up. And now there's research to back up what I've been sharing. And the Adverse Childhood Experiences, this was a study done back in the 90s and it's only just coming to light now. And it was 17,000 people, so it was a very good-sized study done by the Centers for Disease Control and Kaiser Permanente, which is a healthcare organization. And they ask 10 simple questions. And if your viewers want to find this, just Google ACEs and NPR, because NPR has the test. So it's 10 simple questions asking about things that happened to you in childhood under the age of 18. And this is not a test that you want to score high on.
Yeah.
And as I share in my book, I scored high. No surprise when I look at it now, but excuse me, I scored high on that. And what it does is the higher you score on this, the higher your propensity, excuse me, not just for anxiety, but obesity and cancer and other healthcare issues later in life. So as you are dealing with these experiences, they carry through.
Yeah, so it's
Excuse me.
As you're saying, is in some way you don't have the awareness, like a lot of people might not have the awareness, or they just kind of carry on with life, and the perspective of those experiences and how they've affected and impacted, especially if they're not psychologically oriented, they're just going about their life.
Right.
If somebody's, these days, it's very common to be in therapy, or to understand, have that approach and orientation to life. But if somebody's had the environment that they grew up in that was very damaging or wounding in some way, and they haven't had any therapy, then it makes sense that there would be this chronic low grade or high grade anxiety. It's kind of like you said, the background that the tape that you're running constantly in your head. Am I safe? I mean, it really stems from, am I safe or not, ultimately, right?
Yeah. Oprah, 3 days before my book published, I was
Yeah.
so thrilled to see Oprah on 60 Minutes talking about adverse childhood experiences, bringing it to the larger audience, because these, what happens in childhood doesn't stay in childhood, and it follows you through. So
If you don't heal it,
Right.
you can recover. And
well, and
but
that's the whole point is
Yeah.
my book is not, okay, read this, and if you have adverse childhood experiences, you're going to be healed. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
You need to have
proactive practice.
Right. You need to have someone else guiding you through your healing. I am not able to work on my own stuff, so I go to other people to help me with that. So the book is not to say, okay, if you have these adverse childhood experiences, this book is going to heal you. It's not. But the whole, really like the foundation of what I believe in and what I share in the book is you have to do daily practices. Whether you have other healing work to do that you need to do with someone else, or if it's, if you've done that healing work like I have, and I still have to practice this, you want to make sure and do them on a regular basis so that you are prepared when things come up, because
it creates a different baseline that you're operating from. So the other thing that we didn't say, which you and I are both yoga teachers, so yoga is about a daily practice. It's like you're never fully baked. It's about,
right.
What am I doing in an ongoing way to keep myself at a certain baseline, and when I come upon things, it's not that it's not going to happen. It is going to happen, but you're going to recover more quickly.
Right.
So can you say a little bit about your own yoga practice and journey and how that factors in with your own healing process?
Oh my gosh, yoga is, it's changed my life. Many people think of yoga, if they don't actually practice yoga, they just think it's an exercise. And the physical part of yoga, as you and I have discussed, it's one part, right? There are 8 limbs to yoga. Yep. So the physical practice is a great example of saying, in the physical practice, we're falling out of balance and bringing ourselves back, falling out of balance, bringing ourselves back. We need to practice that on an emotional and spiritual level as well. And that I'm just recovering from a really bad bout of bronchitis, and so I haven't done my physical practice in almost 2 weeks, and I miss it, but there's other parts of yoga that I am practicing because I have to do that on a daily basis. It really is use it or lose it.
So it's interesting. So I find that even when I've had, physical things, I still do my practice every day. Even if, depending on what the Kriya is, which is a designed set of instructions designed to produce a desired effect in terms of, physical exercises. If there's something I can't do physically, I will do it mentally.
Oh, okay.
And breathing, bronchitis, you can always do breath work.
Right. Well, and that's why I say I wasn't doing the physical practice, but I'm doing other parts of it.
Yeah.
And, I just lost what I was going to say. What did you say, though? I was like...
I said, even if you can't do the physical practice, you can even do it mentally.
All right, yes. So there have been great studies that show that mental practice can be just as effective. There was a study where they had people, 2 groups. One group pulled on a spring with their index finger. The other group just imagined pulling on the spring with their index finger.
Probably very similar.
And yes, at the end of the study, the people who just imagined pulling on that spring had greater muscle effect in that finger.
Isn't that amazing? It really speaks to, it's not a woohoo thing, this whole energy, and how your mental process and thought patterns literally has a physical manifestation.
Yeah.
So let's go back for a minute. The ACEs, you start out in the book just explaining, okay, here's the context. You may have come from an adverse childhood and didn't really realize it. I mean, most people would realize it, but maybe you didn't really realize the extent of it and the extent of which it is still impacting you today, potentially. And then you move into an approach and different exercises. And one of the things you say in there, which is interesting, is that affirmations don't work. Say more about that.
I am so strong about that because literally...
Tell us how you really feel.
Okay. I have yet to meet one person who has said, ooh, affirmations changed my life. Because what happens is if, okay, I could use to lose some weight. So if I'm using these affirmations saying, I'm at my ideal, size and weight, everything in me is going, no, you're not, no, you're not.
Yeah.
So it's pushing back against it, right?
It's really your emotional element and your unconscious thoughts. So you could be saying consciously,
Right.
but you've got other things going on below the surface there that are
Right,
counteracting.
and that below the surface is where everything happens. Like our subconscious mind, if you think of our mind as like an iceberg, right? You only see 10% above the water, that represents the conscious mind. 90% below the surface, that's the subconscious mind. So in your subconscious mind, when you go, you know what, you need to lose weight, but you're consciously saying, ooh, I'm at my ideal size and weight, there's a total disconnect and it's pushing up against each other. So instead, Noah St. John wrote a book called Afformations, and you turn it into a question, right? So instead of, I'm at my ideal size and weight, why is it so easy for me to be dropping weight? And then I add, and so it is, thank you, thank you, thank you. And I think I talked about it in the book. I know I have it on my on an article on my website. When my son graduated, graduated from college, he graduated without a job, and I'm so sorry.
What's more?
After a couple of months, he was really bummed. And this is the kid who called me the woo-woo crackpot, so he really doesn't believe in any of the stuff that I believe in. But he was desperate, so he said, all right, I'll try it. And he ended up finding a really good job.
So what was your directive? So you were reprogramming him, it sounds like. What was your directive?
To do the affirmations.
Yeah.
Why is
Afform,
it so?
F-O-R-M?
Yes, affirmations.
So how are you forming your...
Right, because what we're doing is programming the most incredible supercomputer there is, which is our brains.
Yeah.
We're programming it like a Google search to go out and search. Why is it so easy for me to find a great job with a good salary? And he did. I helped him move he was in the Florida Keys, we got there, and Negative Ned was the man who checked us in at the condo. He was like, oh, the housing market's horrible, he's not going to find anything.
He only needs one job. Right.
So what did we do? We did our affirmations, and he found a great place to live within his budget, like exactly for his budget. It works.
Also what it's doing is by asking the question, instead of making a statement and pushing it out to yourself, you're asking the question and you're inviting something in, and you're asking your brain to do some work in the background unconsciously.
Yes.
Like, okay, I've got to answer this question.
Right. Well, and he went, so Noah St. John and my approach is to ask the question and then just leave it be. I just like, all right, putting it out to the universe.
Keep perseverating on it over and over.
I really think that aside from just saying it out loud, it's very helpful to write it down because when we write things down, it wires it into our brain in a whole different pattern.
Yeah.
So my son took it to a whole nother level, and he sent me a picture on his phone he wrote the question, and then he wrote out why it was going to be so easy for him to find the job. And I mean, pages and pages and pages upon this.
So how soon after he did this exercise did he get a job?
Within a couple weeks.
Okay, so he got the interview, and then it all happened very quickly.
Yeah.
So let's weave in another aspect of your training and background and your orientation. So somewhere along the line, you went and became certified in hypnotherapy.
Yeah.
And we're talking a lot about the unconscious. So say more about the work you do there and how that comes into play here.
Oh my gosh. The first day that I was in my hypnosis training, I was absolutely astounded at how easily you can make some change, like that quickly and that easily. I have a real gift for it. It is something that just comes natural to me, and then I learned how to really harness it. And a lot of people who practice hypnosis are reading scripts, and I don't. And
so you just work intuitively.
Yeah, because the scripts, whether it's, I see them online for tapping, for EFT now, whether it's a script for hypnosis or a script for EFT or whatever, everybody's different.
Yeah.
So whether it's, you know, most people will think about hypnosis and they'll think about quitting smoking and losing weight. Those are the two common things.
Yeah.
But then you think about fears. I have a website with pictures of this amazing client who came to me at the age of 19, terrified to fly. She was not going to go with her family on their winter vacation. And her mother, I remember they came to interview me back when I still had my office. And they sat on the couch, and the mother said, "We know exactly when it started." And I said, maybe not. And sure enough, it was not where she thought it started. It was something else. But I had that gift of being able to help her go back to when that first sensitizing event happened. Then we did the healing work around it. She went on her vacation. She went on a lot of flights. I have pictures of her on this website skydiving. She was jumping out of an airplane.
Well, that's from one extreme to the other.
Yeah, another picture of her co-piloting a small airplane.
Oh, so now she's flying the planes. So it sounds like it was a process of you're being in tune in terms of knowing what questions to ask.
Yeah.
At the right time.
Yes, and it's not and it's not about the conscious mind.
Yeah.
Right? So consciously you would say, okay, let's go back to this, you know, this childhood memory or whatever. I have an innate gift of being able to help people without re-experiencing trauma to find where that initial event is and then do the healing work around it.
See, because that's a tricky thing, is to ensure that people don't get re-traumatized.
Right.
Because sometimes just talking about it over and over, it's like, are you moving people to a different place?
Well, and that's where, you know, some people believe in exposure therapy, like for fear of flying.
Yeah,
that
like
you know,
desensitize.
right, and
Yeah.
like, why would I want somebody to have to re-experience?
Yeah, right.
Right.
So, so can you share with us? So we have like maybe 5 more minutes or so. Or can you share with us some exercises and?
Well, one of the things I really believe in is essential oils, and this is lavender. Smell that. Like, I'm sure people have heard, oh, lavender's calming, and it really is.
It really is.
Like,
It is.
I love essential oils.
nice.
So lavender is great for stress and anxiety.
Yep.
Frankincense is the king of oils. That is great for just about anything.
You know, the interesting thing about frankincense is it has a real complexity to it. Mm-hmm. You know, it's sort of grounding and uplifting and light at the same time.
Yeah.
Love that.
And then this one is ylang ylang. It's a very sweet smelling one. I love that.
This one's like, it's very uplifting. Mm-hmm. It's very light, almost like a joyful. It's amazing what you can do with a scent,
right.
isn't it?
And then the other extreme is bergamot, which is a very earthy, like heavy. But again,
totally opposite.
Because I believe in a one-size-doesn't-fit-all approach, you know, I talk about all these different essential oils so you can find the right one for you. There are some fabulous herbal teas, like Yogi Teas has some great stress-relieving teas.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And then something simple, you know, we'll do some breath work
not
in a
gonna throw
second.
that at me.
No. So if you just pass a tennis ball back and forth, side to side, most people don't have a tennis ball handy. It could be a water bottle or your keys. You want to go like this.
Just creating some movement. And you're working the right and left side of the brain.
What you're doing is both sides of the brain. So you're stimulating the vagus nerve, which is the longest nerve in your body, goes from your brain all the way down and circles all of the organs in your abdomen. And that stimulates your parasympathetic nervous system.
Yeah.
So simply doing that. The EFT tapping, it's too involved for us to go into now.
But that's really so simple, and yet it can have a big impact.
All of the techniques that I share in the
3
book.
minutes. Somebody could do these in 3 minutes.
They're all very
1 minute.
simple because, and I have 35, they're in alphabetical order because one size doesn't fit all. Find 2 or 3 that really work for you and do them on a regular basis. When I was first exposed to meditation, you have to meditate 20 minutes in the morning, 20 minutes at night. I was like, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And I still have never gotten that practice.
Yeah.
Yet, if you can take 5 minutes, it's better than not doing it at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Start
And-
small, be consistent.
Right.
Yeah.
There are so many different apps. One of the things I talk about in here is taking a digital time out because I think there's been so much coming out about how addictive the devices are.
Oh yeah, there's a digital detox actually. So you talk earlier. You said you're not going to heal yourself with this book. And yet, if somebody picked 2 or 3 practices and they were consistent practicing them every day,
it would make a
they're gonna
tremendous difference.
it's more about, are you consistent over time?
Yes. Yeah, and it is about pick a couple of things that work for you. So EFT is what I learned first, the tapping. Well, if that's all I knew, I couldn't help as many people as I have, because I've had some people over the years who are like, that's not for me.
Yeah.
Okay, great. I don't say, all right, that's not working, so now let's try that, but just seamlessly move into something else.
Something from the hypnotherapy, something from the yoga, you've got some breathing in there, you've got some other physical things you can do.
Yeah, something as simple as breath work of, and this is still my go-to, if I do have a problem sleeping, I think I'm breathing in, I'm breathing out. I'm breathing in, I'm breathing out. I go right back to sleep. I mean, it's simple shifts are what create lasting change.
So what would you say, so we've got about 2 more minutes. So what would you say to somebody who was really resistant to trying anything? Because sometimes when you're in it and you're like really anxious and up here and you can't find a way out, like what do you do to like ground somebody in that minute?
If I was with them, I would be able to pull out, myriad of things. It would depend on the person and what they were going through. But if they're absolutely shut down and totally resistant to it,
like,
there's
no,
nothing.
I've tried that. That's not going to
Right.
work.
There's nothing I could do.
Yeah.
I used to, when I had my hypnosis practice for 10 years, I had a couple of men who came, and they were like this. And I was like, I can't help you, I don't have a magic wand. And if somebody tells you, if somebody guarantees they can help you, I'd be cautious.
What's a good go-to one that you might use though?
Breath work. To just, okay, look at my eyes, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. And it automatically, it's breaking the cycle, right?
But, but looking at somebody, there's a relational component to it too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So if somebody was interested in finding out more about your techniques and your approach, or they had any questions about anything we talked about today, how might they contact you?
On my website, stephaniedalfonzo.com, and on there they can get 5 of the techniques from the book for free. So you don't even have to go buy the book. Just download these 5 techniques, try them, and you will find a difference. It's just about being consistent and doing them every single day.
Yeah, and what's an email if they had a question for you?
sd@stephaniedalfonzo.com.
Okay. All right, Stephanie, this has been really helpful. Goodness knows in this country we could use a little ratcheting down the anxiety.
Yeah, I
Thank
think
you for
so.
joining us. I'm Susan Shaner. Until next time with Community Forum, thank you for joining us.